Welcome back to our channel. Ever held a Washington quarter and thought it was just 25 cents? One rare 1932 DMS-66 sold for over $243,000. Like and subscribe to uncover more pocket change treasures. Every day we touch them without thinking, quarters jingling in our pockets, sliding into meters, vending machines, or cash registers. Most pass through our hands unnoticed, but every so often, one of these seemingly ordinary coins hides a secret that even seasoned collectors can barely believe. The 1978 U.S. Washington quarter dollar is one of those coins. At first glance, it looks like every other quarter minted in the millions that year, George Washington's familiar profile on the obverse, the regal eagle perched on the reverse. Yet in the intricate world of coin collecting, the 1978 Washington quarter holds a place of mystery and fascination. Because a small number of these coins left the U.S. Mint with astonishing errors and anomalies, errors so rare that one coin, no bigger than a bottle cap, could be worth enough to buy a luxury car or even make a down payment on a house, the story begins at the Philadelphia and Denver mints. In 1978, production was at full speed to meet the country's demand for circulating coins. Nearly 1.6 billion quarters were struck that year between the two mints, a staggering number. But amidst the precision and automation, the process is never entirely immune to human error or mechanical misstep. And that's what makes 1978 so special. It was a year of transition, when dies and planchets occasionally mismatched, when striking mistakes slipped by unnoticed, and when a handful of coins were born unique. Some of the most valuable 1978 quarters were struck on the wrong planchet. A planchet, the blank metal disc that becomes a coin, is supposed to meet strict standards. But mistakes happen. In 1978, a few quarters were mistakenly struck on dime planchets, producing undersized, lightweight quarters that still bore all the correct designs, just cramped and incomplete at the edges. Others were struck on foreign planchets left over from U.S. contracts to mint coins for other nations. Imagine finding a quarter that weighs less, has a strange tone to its metal, and doesn't quite feel right in your hand, only to learn it was never meant to exist in the first place. Even more dramatic are the double die obverse errors known to exist from 1978. These errors occur when the die that stamps the coin's design is improperly manufactured, transferring the design onto the die twice at a slight angle. The result is a visible doubling on letters and numbers. On these rare 1978 quarters, the doubling is most noticeable on the word Liberty, the motto, "In God We Trust," and sometimes even on the date itself. To the untrained eye, the coin just looks blurry. But under magnification, the doubling comes alive, clear evidence of a mistake at the very heart of the minting process. There are also dramatic off-center strikes from 1978 that collectors prize dearly. These occur when the planchet isn't seated properly in the press, and the design is stamped off to one side, leaving a crescent of blank metal. The farther off-center the strike, the rarer and more valuable the coin becomes, especially when the date remains visible, allowing collectors to authenticate it as a 1978 piece. And then there are the proof errors. Proof coins are intended to be flawless showpieces, struck multiple times with specially polished dies to create sharp, mirror-like designs. But even the meticulous San Francisco Mint isn't infallible. Some 1978 proof quarters exhibit striking errors, ghostly impressions of other designs from die clashes, frosted surfaces where there shouldn't be, or even incomplete strikes leaving parts of the design faint or missing. These errors are especially prized because they contradict the very purpose of a proof coin, showcasing the rarest kind of imperfection. The most fascinating part of this story isn't just the errors, it's how they're found. One collector in Pennsylvania discovered a 1978 quarter that seemed lighter than usual while sorting through rolls of change from a local bank. He set it aside, curious, and later had it weighed and authenticated. The quarter had been struck on a dime planchet, and after grading, it sold at auction for over $60,000. Another collector in Texas inherited a box of old coins from his grandfather and spotted a 1978 proof quarter with a faint double die obverse. After sending it to a grading service for confirmation, he learned it was one of only a few known to exist, and it eventually sold for nearly six figures. Auction records show that collectors are hungry for these coins. One pristine, slabbed 1978 double die obverse quarter sold for more than $85,000 in a fierce bidding war between two private collectors. Another off-center specimen, dramatically struck and perfectly preserved, went for over $70,000. And every year, as awareness of these rare errors grows, so too does the competition to find them before someone else does. For anyone wondering whether they might have one of these treasures in their own pocket, it's worth taking a closer look. Start by checking for anything unusual: quarters that feel too light or too heavy, edges that look incomplete or show signs of being struck off-center, or letters and numbers that seem doubled or blurred. Even a basic magnifying glass can reveal details that might otherwise go unnoticed. If you have proof sets from 1978 tucked away in a drawer or safety deposit box, it's worth examining them too. Proof errors often go undiscovered for decades. It's easy to take a quarter for granted. After all, it's just 25 cents, good for a parking meter or a quick candy bar at the corner store. But the 1978 Washington quarter reminds us that even the smallest things can carry the greatest stories. In these rare coins, we see history, accident, and craftsmanship intertwining in a way that turns pocket change into treasure. So tonight, when you empty your pockets or crack open a forgotten jar of coins, take an extra moment to look closely at your quarters. That seemingly ordinary 1978 Washington quarter might just be extraordinary, and if it is, you could be holding a coin worth anywhere from $55,000 to $140,000. Some coins seem so common we hardly notice them, even though they hold secrets that can astonish even the most seasoned collectors. Among them lies one of the most surprising treasures hiding in plain sight: the 1982 U.S. Washington quarter dollar. This everyday coin, passed through countless hands and forgotten in countless drawers, carries a hidden story of mistakes, transitions, and rare anomalies that transform what looks like ordinary change into a fortune. Few people realize that a single 1982 quarter, just 25 cents by face value, has sold at auction for more than most luxury cars. Because in 1982, a perfect storm of minting challenges, economic decisions, and rare errors collided to make this one of the most intriguing modern quarters to ever leave the U.S. Mint. The year 1982 marked a turning point for American coinage. The economy was in recession, and inflation loomed large. To save costs, the U.S. Mint was experimenting with different production methods and materials, particularly reducing the quality control checks to keep up with demand and lower costs. That alone opened the door for mistakes. Add to that the fact that proofs weren't produced for circulation that year. San Francisco only struck a limited number of proof sets for collectors, and it created an environment where errors not only happened but slipped into circulation unnoticed. From Philadelphia to Denver, millions of quarters were churned out, and buried in those millions were a handful of incredible rarities. One of the most sought-after 1982 quarters comes from a simple but profound mistake: striking the coin on the wrong planchet. In the hustle of production, a few quarters were accidentally struck on nickel or even copper penny planchets. The result? Quarters that weighed noticeably less and bore a strange hue, reddish copper tones instead of the silvery clad. Other errors involved foreign planchets, remnants from the mint's production contracts for other countries. A collector once discovered a 1982 quarter on a smaller brass-colored planchet, and after expert examination, it was confirmed to have been struck on a planchet intended for a foreign denomination, an accident so rare it commanded tens of thousands of dollars at auction. Even more dramatic, and perhaps the most legendary of all 1982 quarters, are the double die obverse errors. These occur when the die that stamps the coin is misaligned in its creation, causing the design to be impressed twice at slightly different angles. The most prominent double die examples from 1982 show clear doubling in the word liberty, the motto, "In God We Trust," and the date itself. To an untrained eye, it might look like nothing more than a blur, but under magnification, the crisp, doubled lines leap out. Few of these errors have ever been found, and each one has sold for extraordinary sums. Some 1982 quarters also left the mint with striking anomalies like dramatic off-center strikes, broad strikes that left the edge unformed and warped, or even die clashes where parts of the design were ghosted onto the opposite side of the coin. These errors, while not as rare as the double die, still rank high on collectors' wish lists, especially when the date remains fully visible and the coin is well preserved. Proof errors are particularly coveted by collectors who know just how unusual they are. In 1982, proof quarters were struck in smaller numbers and under stricter quality standards, yet even here, mistakes happened. Proofs showing frosted fields in places they shouldn't, or faint doubling from improperly prepared dies, became the crown jewels of their finders' collections. One proof error from 1982 sold privately to a collector for over $80,000, and another surfaced at auction a few years later to fetch a similar price. The stories of how these coins are found are often as exciting as the coins themselves. One man in Illinois was sorting through a box of old pocket change his father had saved when he noticed a 1982 quarter that felt strange in his hand, lighter, with a reddish tinge. After sending it for professional grading, it was confirmed to be a wrong planchet error, struck on a copper penny blank. It later sold at auction for more than $90,000. Another collector in Florida found a double die example in a roll of quarters purchased from a local bank. A single roll that cost him $110 yielded a coin that sold for nearly $100,000 a few months later. Auction records continue to show that demand for these errors is strong and growing. In just the past decade, multiple 1982 quarter errors have sold for 5 and even 6 figures. Collectors covet them not only for their rarity but also because they represent a piece of numismatic history, a window into the challenges and quirks of the U.S. Mint during a turbulent economic era. If you're wondering how to spot one of these hidden treasures, start by paying closer attention to the quarters you already have. Look for off-center strikes where the design seems shifted and part of the coin remains blank. Weigh your coins if they feel light or heavy. Wrong planchet errors often have noticeably different weights than standard quarters. And, most importantly, check the details of the letters and numbers under a magnifier. Doubling is subtle to the naked eye but unmistakable up close. Proof sets from 1982 are also worth reviewing. Even if you've kept them sealed in a box all these years, a rare proof error could be waiting to be discovered. We've all been guilty of tossing quarters into jars without thinking about them. They're everywhere: parking meters, vending machines, laundry rooms, and they feel utterly ordinary. But the 1982 Washington quarter proves that even among the most common of coins, true treasures can be hiding. These coins remind us to slow down, to look closely, and to remember that history, chance, and value can all be hiding in the palm of your hand. So tonight, when you empty your change into a jar or pull a handful of coins from a drawer, take a closer look at your quarters. That unassuming 1982 Washington quarter might just be extraordinary, and if it is, you could be holding a coin worth anywhere from $50,000 to $125,000. Sometimes, the most extraordinary stories hide in the most ordinary places. A handful of loose change rattling in your pocket. A dusty jar of coins tucked away in a closet. A single quarter, dated 1986, that seems no different from the millions of others, until you look closer. The 1986 U.S. Washington quarter dollar is one of those coins collectors dream of, an unassuming piece of American currency that, thanks to a series of rare minting errors and anomalies, has been known to sell at auction for more than the price of a luxury car. How is it possible that a simple quarter, just 25 cents in face value, can command such an astonishing price? The answer lies in the fascinating, and often surprising, world of numismatic history. The year was 1986, and the U.S. Mint was operating full speed to meet the nation's demand for circulating coins. Philadelphia and Denver churned out hundreds of millions of quarters, each bearing the familiar profile of George Washington on the obverse and the proud heraldic eagle on the reverse. To most people, these coins were just another part of everyday life: parking meters, phone booths, candy machines. But behind the scenes, the sheer scale of production at the Mint opened the door for small, rare mistakes to slip through. And for collectors, those mistakes turned into opportunities worth tens of thousands of dollars. One of the most coveted errors on the 1986 quarter is the double die obverse. This subtle yet striking anomaly occurs when the die, the steel stamp that impresses the design onto blank planchets, shifts slightly during preparation, imprinting the design twice at a barely noticeable angle. To the naked eye, the coin might look normal, but under magnification, the telltale doubling leaps out in the letters of Liberty, the phrase, "In God We Trust," and sometimes even the date itself. These double die examples are exceedingly rare, and when they surface at auction, they ignite fierce bidding wars among collectors. Another legendary mistake found on 1986 quarters is the off-metal, or wrong planchet, strike. With so many different coins being struck in the mint's presses, including pennies, nickels, dimes, and even foreign contracts, it was inevitable that sometimes the wrong blank planchet would end up under the quarter die. A few 1986 quarters have been discovered struck on copper penny planchets, resulting in an unusual reddish tone and a lighter weight. Others have been struck on foreign planchets, sometimes thinner, sometimes thicker, sometimes even showing unusual yellow or brass colors. These planchet errors are incredibly rare, often unique, and have sold at auction for staggering sums. Collectors have also prized certain striking anomalies from that year: off-center strikes where part of the coin's design is cut off and the blank metal shows, broad strikes that warp the edge and leave the rim incomplete, and dramatic die clashes where ghostly outlines of the eagle appear on the obverse or vice versa. While these errors are more common than double dies or wrong planchets, they still fetch impressive prices, especially if the date remains fully visible and the coin is in pristine condition. The proof coins of 1986 add another layer of intrigue. Struck in San Francisco for collector sets, proofs are made with special care to ensure sharp details and a mirror-like finish. Yet even here, mistakes sometimes slipped through. A few proof quarters from that year show frosted fields where they shouldn't, or faint doubling that adds a surreal beauty to the already sharp design. These proof errors are especially prized by collectors who understand just how rare they are given the higher standards applied to proof coinage, and it's not just the coins themselves that make these stories so compelling, it's the way they're discovered. A retired teacher in Ohio, who had been collecting coins casually since his youth, once opened a roll of quarters he'd bought from the bank decades earlier only to find a 1986 double die staring back at him. That single coin later sold for more than $75,000 at auction, paying off his mortgage. In another case, a teenager in California sorting through his father's old coin jar came across a quarter that looked strange, reddish and lighter than the rest. A coin dealer confirmed it as a wrong planchet error, and it eventually sold for over $100,000 to a private collector. Stories like these have fueled the passion of everyday people to dig through their spare change, always hoping to find the next great treasure. Over the years, the auction block has seen some truly remarkable sales of 1986 quarters. A superb double die example fetched just under six figures at a prestigious numismatic auction. An exceptionally rare copper planchet error brought in more than $110,000. Even unusual off-center strikes have sold for thousands when in pristine condition. What drives these prices is not just rarity, but also the condition of the coin. A mint-state specimen with sharp details and little to no wear can multiply the value several times over. If you're wondering how you might find one of these elusive quarters, the key is careful observation. Start with the date, 1986, and examine each coin under good light or even a magnifier. Look at the letters in Liberty and In God We Trust for signs of doubling. Check the weight if the coin feels unusually light or heavy, as wrong planchet errors often don't match the standard quarter weight. Inspect the edges for signs of off-center or broad-struck errors. And if you're lucky enough to own a proof set from 1986, it may be worth revisiting. A subtle error hidden in that mirror-like surface could be worth more than you ever imagined. The 1986 Washington quarter is a perfect example of why coin collecting remains one of the most fascinating and rewarding hobbies in the world. It's a reminder that extraordinary value can hide in the most ordinary places. That a single, humble coin can carry within it a story of history, human error, and incredible luck. So tonight, when you empty your change into a jar or reach into your pocket, take a moment to really look at the quarters in your hand. That simple 1986 Washington quarter might just hold more than pocket change, it could hold a fortune. Some of these rare and remarkable examples have sold at auction for anywhere between $44,000 and $116,000. It's proof that treasure doesn't always lie at the bottom of the sea, sometimes, it's right there in the palm of your hand. Every once in a while, the most extraordinary discoveries come from the most unexpected places, and they often sit unnoticed in the palm of your hand. A plain, ordinary-looking coin that has passed through vending machines, pockets, and jars of loose change for decades might actually hold a secret worth a small fortune. The 1996 U.S. Washington quarter dollar is one such coin, a piece of everyday American life that, under the right circumstances, can be worth far more than its modest 25-cent face value. Thanks to rare minting errors, unusual planchets, and fascinating anomalies, this unassuming coin has captivated collectors and surprised ordinary people who stumbled upon them without even knowing what they had. It was 1996, the midpoint of a decade defined by booming technology and a bustling economy, and the U.S. Mint was busier than ever, producing over 1 billion quarters to keep up with demand. These quarters bore the familiar Washington profile, a design that had already become an American icon, with the heraldic eagle proudly displayed on the reverse. Millions upon millions poured out of the presses in Philadelphia and Denver, a river of silver-toned copper-nickel destined for everyday transactions. But at such immense production scales, even the most sophisticated machinery isn't immune to errors, and it was precisely these errors that turned a small handful of 1996 quarters into collectors' treasures worth thousands. One of the most sought-after varieties of the 1996 quarter is the double die obverse. Caused by a slight misalignment during the hubbing process, this error results in subtle but distinct doubling on key elements of the design. The words "Liberty" and "In God We Trust" sometimes appear as if they've been ghosted or echoed slightly to the side, a phenomenon that catches the light and sends collectors into a frenzy. This error is subtle to the casual eye but unmistakable to a trained collector, and when one of these scarce examples hits the auction block, it becomes clear how much value that doubling holds. Other extraordinary examples include coins struck on the wrong planchet, the blank piece of metal that gets struck by the dies. In the busy, chaotic atmosphere of the mint, it's not unheard of for a dime or even a foreign coin planchet to find its way into the quarter press. The result is a 1996 quarter that's underweight, unusually small, or sporting a faintly golden or copper hue instead of its normal silvery appearance. These off-metal errors are among the rarest of all mint mistakes, with some examples believed to be unique. They're the kind of coin that excites even the most seasoned collectors when they surface, often selling for staggering sums. And then there are the striking anomalies, coins that display off-center designs, missing parts of their images because the blank wasn't properly aligned under the die. Some 1996 quarters have been discovered struck off-center by as much as 50%, showing a dramatic crescent of blank planchet alongside an incomplete eagle or a partially missing portrait of Washington. Other quarters show broad strikes, where the collar die failed to properly constrain the planchet, leaving the coin with a misshapen, expanded appearance and no reeded edge. Even die clashes, where faint outlines of one side's design appear on the opposite face of the coin, have been recorded on 1996 quarters and fetch considerable premiums. For collectors, it's not just about the errors, it's about the thrill of discovery and the connection to history. The Washington Quarter series, in circulation since 1932, has long been a favorite of collectors because of its enduring design and the many varieties that have emerged over the decades. By 1996, it was nearing the end of an era. Just a few years later, the U.S. Mint would begin producing the state quarters, transforming the reverse design entirely and sparking a whole new generation of collectors. That makes the 1996 quarters something of a transitional piece, the last of the traditional eagle-back design before the program changed course. Stories of remarkable finds always add a touch of magic to the hunt. A woman in Arizona discovered a rare double-die 1996 quarter while rolling coins at her kitchen table. After a local dealer verified it, she sold it at auction for more than $60,000, a windfall that allowed her to take her grandchildren on a dream vacation. Another man in Florida, sorting through a box of loose change inherited from his grandfather, came across what appeared to be an unusually light quarter with a golden tone, a classic wrong planchet error that later fetched over $90,000 at auction. Tales like these have inspired everyday people to pull out their jars of change and examine every last coin with renewed curiosity and care. Auction houses have seen these rare 1996 quarters achieve remarkable prices, with the most exceptional examples drawing competitive bids from collectors eager to complete their Washington quarter sets with one of these elusive varieties. Condition is everything. A pristine, uncirculated specimen of a rare variety can multiply in value compared to one that shows heavy wear. Many of these high-value coins are found in rolls or mint sets, where they've been protected from the wear and tear of circulation for decades. So, what can you do if you want to find one of these treasures yourself? Start by paying close attention to the date, 1996, and looking for anomalies in the lettering and details of the coin. Examine the weight, especially if the coin feels unusually light or heavy. Look for obvious signs of misalignment, strange colors, or missing design elements. A magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe can help you spot the fine details of doubling or clashes. If you think you've found something unusual, take it to a reputable coin dealer or grading service for authentication. You may just have a hidden gem in your hands. The story of the 1996 Washington quarter is a reminder that history isn't just something you read about in books, it's something you can hold in your hand. Every coin tells a story, and sometimes those stories are worth far more than their face value. In this case, collectors have been willing to pay between $37,000 and $103,000 for rare, exceptional examples of this seemingly ordinary quarter. So the next time you hear that familiar clink of change in your pocket, take a closer look. That 1996 Washington quarter just might be the most valuable 25 cents you've ever seen, a hidden piece of American history, waiting to be discovered.